Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to News Nation, where right and left come to be reasonable. My pop was even more right about America being a tale of two cities than he knew when he gave his famous speech in 1984. And I hope the Democrats go back and look at it, or whatever they're going to call themselves with this new populist movement, because where you guys are your best and you reach the most people who need the most help from government in this country was what he spelled out for you all those years ago. It's more true today. The chasm between the haves and the don't have enoughs is worse than ever. Affordability is real. The idea of becoming socialistic to cure it is crazy. But it's worse than that. We're not just what my father lamented with, oh, look at Andrew behind him. See him there? Look how young he was. Anyway, what my father lamented about Reagan's shining city on the hill, and that there was another city that was in the shadows where the glitter didn't show. We have now transcended metaphor. We literally have two different realities. We have two different realities, okay? You have the majority in this country, which has clear and specific concerns that are very much in play, but those in positions of power in the media and the political class are determined to distract from the interests of the many with fringe interests of the few, mostly scandal, most recently Epstein and Russiagate, okay? And I can prove the disconnect. Do you want to know what matters most to the most people in this country? Not looking back, but fears forward. The S&P just posted its fifth straight record close this week. I don't even know if you heard that, even though 6 out of 10 of us have investments in the stock market one way or another, right? But we're not talking about it. Why? Well, it's not scandalous. But I'll tell you what, it matters more, and not just because the president and the administration should be talking about it because it's good for them. It's a good data point. I'm more about Main Street than I am about Wall Street, and that's why the higher the market goes, the more these parallel concerns go about there being a collapse because of tariff deadlines that are looming, and that there are nowhere near the deals that were promised. The overall trade deficit has actually gotten worse, if you see it as a bad thing to begin with. And next week, we will see major changes to tariffs and the economy with Trump's August 1st tariff deadline. And people are very worried about it. But we're not talking about it. Why? Because of Russiagate and Epstein and other distractions for the pod people. All right? Look, promising 90 deals in 90 days, that's like I'll end the war in Russia tomorrow, I'll end the war in Israel. I count on the hyperbole, okay? Liberation Day tariffs. It was never going to happen, but they're not even close. And the question becomes, what happens with the uncertainty? I don't fault the administration for trying to make better deals for American workers. It should have happened before this administration. Republicans then passed the big, beautiful bill. They get the tax cuts that people voted on, but who's getting the benefit? And who's paying for that benefit? I'm getting the benefit, the top of the tax brackets, and I'm getting it by a lot. And who's paying for it? Because they're not going to pay for themselves, and if they say that's true, it has never been true. They did not pay for themselves the last time. Do a quick Google search, get 4 or 5 different sources, come back to me, you'll see I'm right. I'm telling you who's paying. The people who needed the relief the most and who can afford any more strain the least. That's who's footing the bill. Trump won this election in big measure because people were disgusted by what seemed to be the lack of security at the southern border. But there has been an overcorrection, and we should be discussing ICE and the policy of who gets deported and how. It is wrong that the men and women who work for ICE have to live in fear and cover themselves. It is wrong that people who are enforcing the law should be covered and not easily marked and not easily announced and identified. But more important than any of it is what our president has already acknowledged he knows more than once. Not everybody who enters the wrong way is the same. And instead of these images, this is not what we need in America. This isn't making us more safe. It's making us more scared. Polls show most Americans think ICE is going too far. And I'm not even going to talk about foreign policy, okay? Because we have enough big ticket issues at home that nobody really wants to deal with. And I'm telling you, I can prove it. This isn't me saying it. It's not how I feel about it. I'm at the mercy of the news cycle as much as anybody. I can't not talk about what everybody else is talking about. You lose the audience. You got to seem like you're plugged in. But if we look at what you want, you see that you don't want this. You don't want Epstein and scandals. Look, is there a moral imperative to find out if people with influence got away with hurting kids? Of course. But I think that was always a false promise, sold on podcasts to make people popular. And it worked. But now the Trump administration has to own it. And that's about the people around the president even more so than him. And the polls show it, a new Gallup poll, all right? Trump went from having a 47% approval rating in January to 37%. Why? Really independence, because the bases are locked in, right? The left hates him, the right loves him, period. It's the fastest growing part of the electorate, the ones that News Nation is designed for, okay? Critical thinking, independent people, non-Democrat or Republican or whatever they are now. And the reason is, I'm worried about overall immigration policy and ICE. I'm worried about the economy and the tariffs and what's going to happen. I'm worried about what it means for trade and how that's going to redound back to me and pricing. And I'm worried about the budget. And the big, beautiful bill hurt the debt and the deficit, which were supposed to be the biggest selling points for change fiscally in this administration. Okay? The largest voting bloc in the country doesn't want to talk Epstein, doesn't want to look back at Russiagate and have another round of lawfare. And you know who should care about this the most? The President of the United States, because he actually has a solid argument to make to these people that he is trying, especially if he makes the adjustment to his ICE policy that I think he is considering making. In January, nearly half of independents approved of Trump. Today, it's less than a third. And no, it's not because he hasn't turned over the Epstein files to the extent that they even exist. And yes, I believe that the president should instruct the AG and Kash Patel to put out whatever they can. And the idea that it's nothing is absurd. But 90% of Republicans are always going to be with him. All right? And only 5% of Democrats. So forget these people. It's the independents. That's who he should be playing to if he cares about legacy and about midterms. And it's all about big ticket items for them. That's why the number has gone down. We're too distracted from those things. So even if he has a case to make, it's not being made. Transparency matters. I know I got to keep saying it because these savages that I'm competing with on social media take little pieces of things and twist it. So I keep saying it. I'm not saying cover for Epstein. Of course it matters. Put it out. It's been poorly handled. But, you know, that's all we're talking about. And there are things that matter more to a lot more people. But I have to cover Epstein because the President of the United States today said this.
People should really focus on how well the country's doing, or they should focus on the fact that Barack Hussein Obama led a coup, or they should focus on the fact that Larry Summers from Harvard, that Bill Clinton, who you know very well, and lots of other friends, really close friends of Jeffrey Summers, should be spoken about. Because, you know, Jeffrey Epstein, I have nothing to do with the guy.
For a second there, I thought our president was going full Nino Brown from New Jack City. I'm taking everybody with me. I don't think that's what it is. I don't believe that there is any real connection between the president and all of the ugly stuff that Jeffrey Epstein did. I do not think it would have stayed a secret. It certainly wouldn't have stayed a secret about Clinton or Summers, you know, who cares about him? But any of these guys, I believe that there was a case to make. If there were a client list, they would have done it. The idea that these people get protected, I think the feds love scalps. They love bold-faced names. Why do you think they went after Martha Stewart so hard for such penny ante inside trading? because they like the bold-faced names. I don't buy it. I don't think the lack of transparency is because Trump is dirty. He would have never surrounded himself with people who are Epstein obsessed. And I think this is a waste of our time. Put out whatever you have. At some point, they're going to have to explain that people who the president put trust in broke your trust, because there is no client list. They're not going to reveal for you the deep state that protected the powerful people who were pedophiles. And it turns out they were right about that non-existent basement under the pizzeria in the middle of nowhere. This is nonsense. It's BS. And I agree, you are right to be morally offended that the wealthy and privileged get away with attacking children. But if it's not there, it's not there, okay? And I think it's more important that somebody at some point say, I'd rather argue about the President of the United States and his administration on the issues that matter the most to the many. What's the economy impact going to be from these tariffs? Are there going to be deals or not? Has he made the numbers too high? Are we seeing inflation? What is the distribution that we're seeing of benefits from this bill? These are the conversations we should be having. Not, is Bill Clinton a pedophile? Look, tell me this, and then I want to get to two better minds. If Jeffrey Epstein had names to offer, there's only one scenario in which he doesn't offer them up. And what is it? That they killed him before he could. Now, two problems with that as a notion, not a theory. Why? Because a theory needs some proof attached to it. As a notion. First one is he would have never waited that long. The man was petrified of going to prison, and he was petrified immediately upon suspicion because of what had happened the first time when he had been caught for soliciting sex with an underage person, which, by the way, was a gift of a deal to him, as disgusting as it is. So then he lets all this time go by. Well, no, they killed him. Now, by the way, they didn't kill him, okay? They may have helped him kill himself, but he wasn't murdered. There's no proof of that, all right? I know people told you that on the podcast. I know you clicked and you subscribed and you followed. They lied to you, okay? So they killed him because of what he knew. You want to believe that? Okay. But they didn't kill the only other person who knows what he knows. So Ghislaine Maxwell, another person who is desperate to not spend another day where she is, she never spoke about anybody else. And she's not dead, last time I checked. Thank God for her. Oh, no, now she's going to talk. There's a second day of questioning by U.S. Deputy AG Todd Blanche. Really? Really? You really think Ghislaine Maxwell is now downloading to the Deputy AG? If the Trump administration has genius in one form, it is advertising its own success. You don't think it's weird that the guys talked to her for 2 days and you haven't heard anything? She was granted this limited form of immunity, which allows her to answer questions without worrying that the answers could be used against her. Like, what else are they going to get her with? Maxwell's lawyer, David Marcus, spoke to the press afterwards. Listen to this.
I think Ghislaine did a wonderful job. She literally answered every question. She didn't say, you know what, don't ask me that. I'm not going to talk about this person. She was asked maybe about 100 different people. She answered questions about everybody, and she didn't hold anything back.
That's because she has nothing to hold back. Come on, use your common sense. So, how long is the president going to leverage his administration to please the fringe few of MAGA on things he's never going to be able to satisfy? Look, I get the play on Russiagate. The people who are into Epstein are also into the dossier and Russian collusion and punishing the Democrats. But they're never going to forget about Epstein, so why not focus on the bigger ticket items for the majority? To help me understand, a member of that MAGA base, conservative commentator Scottie Nell Hughes, friend of show, and someone who's newer to this arena, progressive Gen Z podcaster, my friend Adam Mockler. Adam, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, so I got to help me understand for each of you. But first, I start with my friend Scottie Nell. What do I have right and what do I have wrong about this state of play, given the polling that suggests where the president should be focused versus where he is?
Well, let me say this. You want to talk about polling? 50% of Americans over the age of 30 believe that sex trafficking is one of the top 3 crimes that they're concerned about in the United States. And that number only increases the younger in age. So we can talk about Epstein, the person in the specific situation, or we can talk about sex trafficking, which is a very big issue on a lot of Americans' minds right now. And that is, I think, why so many people on the left and the right are concerned, because we do feel like that there is a huge problem with sex trafficking happening, and that deals with immigration. That deals with a lot of these other issues. They're all intertwined, Chris. And so we want to have answers. We feel like the powerful for so long have covered up for them.
I'm with you, but part of that is mythology and part of it is material. You're right about trafficking, so let's focus on it where it actually is in reality, which is inside the country. What we used to call prostitution and pimps are now called traffickers and trafficked individuals. Let's focus on that, not Epstein, because you're never going to get satisfaction on that. And Adam, that's my problem with you guys. I believe that the left jumping on the Epstein train is just because you think it's bad for Trump. Because if you really cared about disclosing anything, you would have done it on your watch.
Yeah, a few things. First of all, I agree that the conspiracy has been overblown in many areas. That tends to happen. But there is definitely more about Trump in this Epstein investigation, and we know that. We know that because new evidence surfaced last week. That journal that was sent to Epstein on his 50th birthday, that was a part of the federal investigation, but wasn't released to the public until about a week ago. So that alone proves there was more material in there. But I mean,
Adam,
Biden's DOJ worked a little, yeah.
Adam,
Yeah.
not every disclosure advances your understanding. The president says he never sent any card for his 50th birthday, but let's say he forgot. Let's say he did, and he drew a pretty little picture and he wrote little silly things on it for Epstein's 50th birthday. How does that inform you to anything nefarious that you didn't know before?
I'm just saying this administration ran on transparency. I really quickly want to go back to what you were saying about Biden not releasing this. The Biden DOJ worked a lot differently. Merrick Garland, whether you like him or don't like him.
This is a talking point. This is a talking point.
Steady hand. Merrick Garland was very careful not to politicize his investigations. Are you telling? Wait, I have a question. I have a question.
Kidding me?
Are you telling me that Donald Trump would allow Pam Bondi to open investigation to Donald Trump Jr.? Would that happen?
I'm saying that under the I'll answer a question with a question. Here's what I'm saying. If you think that Merrick Garland wouldn't have dropped a bomb on Donald Trump's head,
he waited like 2 or 3 years to even investigate a stolen election from Donald Trump. Donald Trump tried to steal the election and Merrick Garland waited forever.
Are you kidding me? They literally tied Trump up for the last 4 years to do everything they could to get him to not be able to run in 2024, especially as he continued to gain momentum and win following the assassination attempt. If you don't think Kamala Harris wouldn't have pulled this out if there was anything devastating to Trump, it's not about Trump. This was absolutely abysmal for Democrats prior to the last month. Democrats hated Epstein. Absolutely,
Kamala Harris didn't have the ability.
Everybody can agree on the left and the right that the DOJ was definitely monopolized and was utilized to go against Trump and those people that were a part of, just like they used the IRS against conservatives in 2012, they definitely utilized the DOJ to target conservatives underneath the Biden administration.
Can you point to one example
definitely
of Kamala
target Trump
Harris?
and his family. They went through Melania's underwear drawer.
Say that again?
They went through Melania's underwear drawer. I mean, you cannot get more targeting than that.
After Trump hid documents for a year, he played cat and mouse
in
for a year.
Melania's underwear.
Well, hold on. Let's not go down the rabbit hole. The Mar-a-Lago thing, I believe, was absolutely a play by President Trump. And the FBI and the Democrats fell for it, is that he basically baited you. Yeah, come on in. Come on in. Come on in and take me. Come on in. And you did it, and it wound up being over nothing, and it looked like a horrible case of lawfare. Here's my pivot point that I want to end on. Adam, how are you guys, as you are now dangerously close to your own populist reformation movement that may be justified in terms of grievance over affordability, I think it is, but socialism as an answer is a death sentence. Why don't you guys just go after what's in the big, beautiful bill and make your case on that Democrats would have done better? Why screw with this other stuff that'll never end well?
Because listen, I didn't think Trump's Epstein ties were that deep until he started acting like someone who's terrified of the truth coming out. He's constantly biting, and I think this is a framework. It's a window into how he covers up everything else. When he lies about who pays the tariff and says that for some reason other countries pay the tariff, he's lying in the same way as when he's lying about the Epstein files, or when he's lying about how much this new bill increases the debt long term. So I think he lies about all of these issues, and at the very least we can use this to create less dogmatic supporters who listen to us on other issues. So part of it is political strategy. Of course, Democrats will harp on this, but also, honestly, I didn't really think Trump's Epstein ties were that deep, but you got to admit, isn't this dude acting really strange every time he's on camera? He's like,
I'll tell you why I think
know.
he's acting strange. And look, if I'm wrong, Adam, please come back and stick it in my face. It happens all the time. I'll tell you why he's acting strange, in my opinion. And Scottie, I'll give this to you and then we'll go. I think Trump is completely flummoxed as to why people care about this so much, because he does not believe there's a client list. He does not believe there's a list of people. Yes, he threw out Clinton and Summers because that's what he does. He threw it out there so that a chooch like me would have to talk about it, which I am. But Scottie, the administration also, don't you think they would be better served with Trump doing a two-step? Pam Bondi, get out there and explain to people what you meant when you said it was on your desk. Go do it. You figure out what your answer is and go give it, because this isn't my problem, it's yours. And second, I'm only going to talk about the economy and what I think I'm doing for it. And maybe I'll talk about ICE and changing my policy. I won't talk about this anymore. Why doesn't he do that? Why doesn't he lean in to what the majority wants?
Transparency, release it. And let me remind you, the reason why the MAGA base cares is because so many close to Trump told them to care for the last 4 years,
Yes.
the last 8 years, that there was something there. They're just following the directions that were given to them. And I do think, Chris, I have to point, I cannot let this go. I think it's absolutely comedic that he's talking about a liar when he literally had a candidate, a person in office that we were lied to for the last 2 years about where his mental health was and his actual health was. So it's funny for any Democrat to call Donald Trump a liar, considering what he just covered for the last 4 years.
Well, look, they're lies, and then they're big lies. Okay, and it depends on which side you're on in terms of how you define those two. And that's part of our problem. But I appreciate you guys discussing it with me. I hope you guys can get exhausted of this issue. We can get some transparency, and then we can get to what matters to the many. The polls are screaming that we're running in the wrong direction from the majority of this country. Adam, appreciate you. We'll talk again. Scottie, Nell, love you. Have a great weekend. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. There's never been a really good answer to what to do about homeless in this country. You know why? Because it's hard. Now, yesterday, the president took a swipe at it in a way that, look, you can say it's more style than substance, but he put out an executive order which says you're not allowed to have people on the street anymore. If the president is right, okay, is this legal and is this doable? Let's debate how you fix what you see in front of your face all the time if you live in a city. Next. I understand the lived experience of homelessness better than most people in my position. Why? Because my brother, Andrew, started and my sister, Maria, helped run one of the country's largest transitional homeless housing organizations called HELP, Housing Enterprise for the Less Privileged. You can look it up. So since I was a kid, I've been bathed in this problem. And of course, my father was a 3-term governor, as was my brother. So I know the policy side. It is very difficult to solve because it is rarely because of one thing. And yet most of the rest of the population thinks one thing about the homeless, which is they're lazy. And it's never really been fair. And that's why the problem's never really gotten better. Now, the president says, I've got a solution. Now, we must note, in his first administration, homelessness got worse. A big part of that was because of COVID. And a lot of people got thrown out of shelters and service areas. And we really haven't recovered since. So now, in the second administration, Trump signs an executive order making it easier to remove homeless people from the streets and put them in hospitals or treatment centers, even if it's against their will. The executive order directs the AG to reverse judicial precedents and end consent decrees that limit state and local governments' ability to commit individuals on the street who are a risk to themselves or others. I don't know how you can reverse the judicial precedent as the Attorney General. You need courts and judges to do that. But let's discuss. Two people, hands-on experience, okay? Robert Marbut, he served as President Trump's homelessness czar in the first term. And Anthony Almojera, who himself was homeless for 2 years before he became a New York City Fire Department paramedic. And first of all, it's good to see you again, brother. Thank you for doing the job of being a first responder. Although I do always think, why is it Almojera and not Almojera?
It's a Philippine last name, and when the grandfather came over, they just started pronouncing the J, but it would be Almojera back in the old country.
Us ethnics, we got to stick together. So let's talk about what works and what doesn't and why. Mr. Almojera, of course, I'm biased because you're a first responder at a fire department, firefighter, but do you believe this works? Is it right to do it this way?
Chris, while I'm all for allocating funds to help homeless or any disadvantaged people, when you segued into this segment, you said it's always been a difficult problem. There is a solution. The solution to homelessness is homes. As somebody who was homeless, as you mentioned, for 2 years, nobody's ever going to get well or get better or get back on their feet if they do not have a home. And the concept of a lazy homeless person is ludicrous because I was working while I was homeless. When you see these people in the street, like your graphic is showing, it's the end result of a whole litany of circumstances that has led to them being homeless. And as somebody who has served in 911 for over 20 years, I have picked up my fair share of homeless people who are not mentally unwell. Right. And the problem with this executive order is that it's an executive order, that's one. So there's no thought out process as to when we scoop people off the streets, what happens when they go into the revolving door of our medical system where there's no back end, there's no social workers, there's no homes to put them in, there's no services or expanded services for drug or alcohol treatment. You know, you have to rebuild people up to either they become productive members of society or they get long-term mental or medical care.
Right. So, Bob, look, something better than nothing, okay? I'd rather have the president talking about this than Bill Clinton and Epstein, you know, so at least we're focused on something here that should matter to the majority. But what about, you know, this is a tricky one. If you're mentally ill and you're not able to be competent about your own decisions and wellness, fine. Then someone can act as your agent legally. But for most of the people, what do you do if they don't need the hospital? They need a job. You know, they need services. They need somebody to help them understand things. You know, is this too one size fits all?
Absolutely not. It's very important to understand that there are 10 definitions of homelessness within the federal government. What this is focusing on is 2 of them, what you call street level homeless, or the people experiencing homeless in your videos you're just showing. That group, the largest study ever done, not by a conservative think tank, but Cal Policy Lab, so it's Berkeley and UCLA, found that 3/4 of the people in street level homeless, not the other type of homeless, but street level, what you were showing in the video, have untreated mental illness and have substance use disorders, 3/4. So it is true that there are 1/4 that aren't in this category, but the lion's share of homelessness is with deep, untreated mental illness. And right now, in the last 4 years, fentanyl has now been commingled in most cities across America. And the problem with the last 4 years of the administration is they put all money toward what's called harm reduction. Talk about a one size fits all. It all went to harm reduction. And that basically says, we will keep giving drugs to people who have drug addictions and substance use disorders. And what my mantra is pretty simple. We have really made it easy to get high in America and hard to get treatment. And we got to flip that on its head and make it easy to get treatment and hard to get high. And that's what this executive order does.
Well, the executive order identifies it, but you got to fund it, and you got to have the mechanisms of the facilities for the states to provide it. So
And
he's
it
doing the
says
easy
there,
part.
If you read the executive order, it does. It says
Right.
we're going to stop funding harm reduction, which allows and funds and facilitates people who have substance use issues, and we're going to do it. We're saying cut those programs, move that money to treatment and recovery programs. That's in the executive order.
Right. I'm just saying most of it's done at the state level. That's where the infrastructure is needed. But let me get a last point from Anthony.
So while I agree there's numerous issues with the both sides how they want to tackle it, the issue that with this executive order, there's no building out of the back end at all. At all. It would have been nice, and I know this may be a stretch for him, but if he had come out and said, I'm allocating these funds, and here's the team of people to go into each affected area and say, and identify what is missing on that back end, such as in New York City, there's no housing, there's no homeless shelters that are adequate enough to have these people stay in while they're getting treatment, which is a long-term process.
Yes.
So as somebody who's picked
right.
up the homeless people, they're out in 72 hours. And the language he
Yeah.
uses is troubling. Criminally vagrant. Homeless people in of itself is not the crime. And when we use that language, we're sitting there and you're painting this picture as if I'm going to sign this executive order. And in his statement, he used the word criminally vagrant. So I'm going to get these criminals off the street and then do what with them? I'd be all for taking people off the street. But what are we going to do with them? We have to have a long-term vision here, and he doesn't have it.
And there are three places, Chris, you said it's not working anywhere in America. Pinellas County, Florida, 85% reduction over 10 years. San Antonio, Texas, 85% reduction over 15 years. A small city like Fort Smith, Arkansas, almost a 90% reduction over the last 6 years. And what they all have in common is they focus on treatment and recovery, and they do everything they can to facilitate people getting into a treatment program and dealing with the root causes of homelessness. And that's what makes those cities and communities very, very successful. So it is being done. But when you go to San Francisco and the Public Health Authority was funding...
that's a different... Yeah, that's a different example, though. What San Francisco had done... No. You're right. What San Francisco did was terrible. It was a mistake, and that's why the new mayor reversed it. But the only thing I'll say is I know what happened in Pinellas County. And yes, you have to get people long-term treatment. They also chased them out and scared them and made them leave. That's not what we should be about. But you're right, treatment, I'm with you. I got to jump, Bob. Thank you for making the case.
Chris, that's actually...
It's not all they did, but it is part of what was going on there. I had people coming to me from there about it. And they changed the laws, and they were very aggressive with them. I'm not saying it's all they did. I'm not saying that you're wrong about what needs to be done. I'm saying that we have to be careful about how you get people off the street. That's all. But, Bob, I appreciate you being here. We'll talk about it more. Anthony, brother, be well. Appreciate you doing the job. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay. Human trafficking, drugs. We've talked about it in the show. But, again, you want to care about what's in the sky and UAPs? I'll throw another high-interest story in. Did you know how much drone traffic there is on the border from the southern side? The Department of Homeland Security believes thousands of cartel drones are inching their way into this country. I want to bring in somebody who understands this, who ran the Advanced Aerospace Threat Program, and just have him explain to us, how bad is this? Next. Do you know that the cartels are sending all these drones all around the border, farther and farther into the country? That's what the Department of Homeland Security says, that they're like tens of thousands of Mexican drug cartel drones. Why? I got a guy who can answer, all right? Former director of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, friend of show all day long, Lou Elizondo. Lou, I just want to give you a few minutes. You explain to the audience, What is this about, and what do they need to think about, and what has to happen?
Sure, Chris, thanks for having me. First of all, I think it's important to note that this is a normal escalation. We've seen for the last 20 years, if you remember when the cartels were deep in the Amazon jungle and they were building these semi-submersible submarines, literally submarines, to try to penetrate U.S. territorial waters and deliver whatever was heroin and cocaine and whatnot. So we should not be surprised at all with the proliferation of drone technology that the cartels now in Mexico are using this technology to their advantage. And by the way, it's not just for the delivery of drugs such as heroin or methamphetamines, but it's also to conduct surveillance and reconnaissance of our border areas to determine our soft spot, to determine our weaknesses, to determine where our guards are, for example, and our Border Patrol agents, and then try to, if you will, circumvent some of that security to continue to provide drugs in this country illicitly. I think there's a bright side to this topic that you have a new individual. She is the nominee right now to be the new U.S. czar, drug czar here in the United States. Her name is Sarah Carter. In fact, I think a former colleague of yours. She cut her teeth some time ago in Afghanistan, looking at the opium production, and then later in South America, and now on the border here in Mexico. But the cartel is very, very clever. And I think we saw what we're seeing, right, of course, in Ukraine with the weaponization of these drones. Thankfully, we have not seen that yet. I think the cartel is probably more interested in conducting illegal business than they are trying to hurt U.S. citizens with lethal drones. But it's really not a far stretch. This administration really needs to pay attention right now to the drone threat, and especially along the southern border right now with Mexico.
Well, Lou, thank you for putting up the alert and giving us the context, and we'll stay on this story as we are the overall macro story of transparency on this issue. We know the government knows more than it's telling us, and it's only a matter of time. Don't lose too much weight, Lou. You're looking good. Don't get too thin, because that's when I attack.
Hitting the gym like you.
You look great. You're way ahead of me. Take care, Lou. Thank you. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Up next, the most important people come on the show. You have your say. 844-968-7720. Let's get after it. All righty, Dusty, who do you got?
We got very little time, but we have time for Josh from Nevada.
Josh from Nevada. What's your question?
Hey, Chris, I was watching the five earlier today, and Jesse brought up that you were going to lead the ticket for 28. How's that looking, brother?
What?
Director?
Exactly.
Uh-oh.
Josh, hold on. Go ahead.
Now, I have two recommendations for other random people to run for the Democrat nomination. Chris Cuomo. I think he could do it. And Clooney. My sources in the Democrat establishment say Clooney has aspirations to be president. And I think they both could do well.
VP?
Listen, all I know about Jesse is that this is the same guy who, told me, said that I was a problem because I wouldn't cover my brother's problems on my show. So I gotta believe he's setting me up for his audience to, chew on my hiney.
I don't think it sounded like that. He sounded very serious.
Please.
You know how fickle politics are.
I would literally rather join the Foreign Legion than I would get into. And now let me tell you something, one serious point. We have to do better than someone like George Clooney or Chris Cuomo for president of the United States.
I'll agree
We
with
have
that.
amazing people in this country. We have amazing people in this country who can lead, who want to lead, who know how to build constituencies, who have the intellectual construct and the philosophical understanding. We can do a lot better than me.
But when
I'm
have-
good at what I do. That's enough. We can do better than me.
But when have you ever been in the same sentence as George Clooney? You won.
I've heard
just
people say
won.
I'm much taller than Clooney. I'm much more built than Clooney.
You've never heard any of
A lot
that.
of stuff.
Never wrong.
I've heard all of it.
It's never
All of it.
happened.
Gotta go.
Lies, all lies.
Go to break. Thanks for dressing up. See you later. Go to break. My buddy Chris Saliza is in for Leland Vittert. I wanted to pull him in here and ask him what I'm getting wrong about my initial analysis. Good to see you, brother. Good luck on the show tonight. Why don't the Democrats forget about Epstein because it was never a righteous cause for them. They just like it because it's bad for Trump. And focus on what's wrong with the big, beautiful bill and how they would do better.
I think they
teeing
should.
into the midterms. And why doesn't Trump just say to Bondi, tell people what you meant when you said what you said. Release anything you can. I'm not talking about this anymore. It's not my problem, it's hers. Ask me about the economy. And when people ask him about this, why doesn't he say, why won't you ask me about the economy? Why doesn't he lean into that?
Well, see, it's that kind of authentic honesty that I think will be at the core of Chris Cuomo 2028. You know, it's that, it's, I mean, how do I not do that? Jesse Waters pushing Cuomo 2028. I will say, Chris, just as a longtime observer of politics, your denials were not Sherman-esque. They were not, I will not run if recruited, I will not serve if elected. So the door is open, people.
Listen, I love Tim Russert. You are no Tim Russert. I run from office. My wife has to get me to vote.
I know.
Okay, if your name's not Cuomo, there's almost no chance I'll show up at the polls, let alone run for office. We can do better than me, my brother. We can do better than me.
All right, my friends. I don't know about that, but thank you. Take good care.
Yeah, yes, you do. Have a good show. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.